The world is freaking out yet again. Finally, yesterday, after all the anticipation, and we've been talking about this for a number of videos, Israel opened its first aid distribution center near Rafah. There will be many more centers to open. We've talked about there being 4 total, but there's actually going to be more than that, I'm now hearing. Let's just say the enemies of Israel are not pleased. There's been a lot of misinformation about what took place, so let's just run down where we are. So, first of all, Hamas took active measures to try to stop Gazans from getting to the aid distribution center. This included setting up roadblocks, and they put out the following message to the people. Quote, do not go to Rafah. Do not fall into the trap. Do not risk your lives. Your homes are your fortress. Staying in your neighborhoods is survival, and awareness is your protection. So here's Hamas telling the people of Gaza, stay put, stay where you are, don't relocate. As I explained in earlier videos, this is critical to Hamas. They don't want the people leaving the areas that are under their control and moving into areas that are under Israeli security control. So Hamas needs this new system to fail, or they are done. Now, at one point in the day yesterday, chaos erupted when people waiting in line to go through security broke through the fence, and crowds rushed in to take aid packages for themselves without going through the security clearance. Now, the GHF, the American organization running the distribution, made a very smart move. They chose to step back and not enter into any kind of confrontation with the people, and they just let the people take the aid packages and go without worrying about the security screening. This is all part of the bumps of the first day, and the Israelis and the GHF have both said that they are gaining control of the situation. The situation was only out of control for a short while, but all the footage you're seeing and the pictures you're seeing online are all from this brief window where there was chaos there. The Israelis fired warning shots in the air, which is a common tactic used throughout the world to disperse riots and to control unruly crowds. All in all, despite these moments of chaos, the newly opened distribution center distributed between 8,000 and 10,000 food boxes. Each food box is enough to feed around 5.5 people for half a week. So we're talking about 50,000 people for half a week. Somewhere in the range of 500,000 meals were distributed yesterday, and more centers and thousands more packages will be distributed today and in the days ahead. And the world, as I said, is absolutely freaking out. The Associated Press reports that the UN and other humanitarian groups have refused to participate in the GHF's system. That's a good thing, saying it violates humanitarian principles. They say it can be used by Israel to forcibly displace the population by requiring them to move near the few distribution hubs or else face starvation, a violation of international law. You see, the United Nations also needs this new system to fail. You've probably heard since the beginning of this war, and maybe before, that the UN Relief Works Agency, otherwise known as UNRWA, is a UN agency that was founded after the founding of the State of Israel to take care of the Palestinian refugees. And it's been turned into an arm of Hamas. There were many UNRWA employees who turned out to be Hamas operatives. The UNRWA schools are the indoctrination centers that Hamas runs that are also often used as Hamas military headquarters. There's really not much distinction between the UN operatives in the Gaza Strip and Hamas. They work hand in hand, and that's why Israel outlawed UNRWA, and many countries in the world, including the United States, have cut their funding from UNRWA because of their cooperation with Hamas. So the UN needs this to fail, because if there is a successful program to distribute humanitarian aid, to take care of the humanitarian needs of the people of Gaza, that cuts the United Nations out of the system, then they are completely irrelevant. They have no reason to exist at all. They have no reason to be in the region. So they're actually fighting for their lives by demonizing this new program and saying that it could never work. So when you see in the media all of the criticism coming out of the United Nations of the new aid distribution program, take it with a healthy grain of salt. That's just the UN trying to protect itself. Now, the best quote I saw was from Christian Cardone, the chief spokesperson of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Quote, "Humanitarian assistance must not be politicized or militarized." I think we can all agree with that humanitarian assistance must not be politicized or militarized. Let's recall that the entire reason that Israel has put together this whole new distribution plan is because Hamas has politicized and militarized humanitarian aid. As we've documented in many of the videos we've done recently, they've controlled the humanitarian aid and used it to fund their war machine and to control the population. They literally have militarized and politicized humanitarian aid, and that's why these new distribution centers are so important, so that humanitarian aid is no longer politicized and militarized. So yes, Christian Cardone, chief spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross, you're absolutely correct. Humanitarian assistance must not be politicized or militarized. And that's why it cannot fall into the hands of Hamas. Now, Al Jazeera, owned and operated by Qatar, referred to a deliberate massacre of Gazans at this checkpoint. What they were talking about is the shots that were fired in the air, but they claim in their news reporting, they quote the Gazan Health Ministry, which is, of course, just Hamas, that the Israelis actually opened fire into the crowd, which is nonsense. There's no record of this. There's a lot of footage of this entire event of people running around. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that any shots were fired at the crowd. There was no massacre. Even in their own story about this deliberate massacre, I think they said that there were 3 people who died as a result of everything going on there on a hot day with a big riot. And I don't even see any confirmation that anyone died other than that one Al Jazeera story quoting the Gazan Health Ministry. So Al Jazeera is, of course, ramping up the anti-Israel rhetoric by calling this a deliberate massacre, as though Israel just lured these people there so that they could open fire on them. Now, the coordination of government activities in the territory, otherwise known as COGAT, which is an Israeli agency which is responsible for Israel's activities in Judea and Samaria and also in the Gaza Strip, and they've been the ones who have been facilitating the humanitarian aid into Gaza ever since the beginning of the war. They have said that there are 400 aid trucks sitting and waiting at the Kerem Shalom border crossing to go into Gaza, into UN hands. This is aid from before this new distribution program that was being allowed in ever since a couple weeks ago when Israel reopened the access to the aid to go into areas, even areas where Hamas still is, and they haven't been picked up. And the UN doesn't even deny that they're there, but they say that there's logistical and security issues that are preventing them from collecting the aid. Maybe the logistical issues are what I talked about in one of my recent videos, that Israel now has drones accompanying the trucks to make sure they don't fall into Hamas hands. Whatever the reason for it, there is aid that's waiting for these UN Hamas guys to go pick up. Here's the important point to keep in mind as we look ahead, as we try to see through the fog of how the media is going to demonize Israel in the days and weeks ahead. First, Israel is not forcing any Gazans to relocate. They are opening up distribution centers. The first one is in Rafah, all the way in the south of the Gaza Strip. There will be other distribution centers further north, and Gazans are free to come to the distribution center, collect their box, and then go back where they came from. They can go back into the Hamas-controlled enclaves in the northern part of the Gaza Strip if they so choose. No one is being forced to be displaced. And there are some people on our side and the Israeli side who've said, hey, wait a second, why are we letting them go back? We should force them to stay here. But I think Israel's actually making the right move, because we don't want to be forcing anyone to relocate. Let them move wherever they choose. But by allowing them to move freely, by allowing them to go back to their homes, even in areas controlled by Hamas, it actually puts Hamas in a very interesting position, a very tight corner. It kind of snookers them, as it were. Let me explain. What's Hamas going to do when people start coming back with their humanitarian aid boxes to feed their families? They can't commandeer the aid from them, because that will cause tremendous unrest and violence, and they're going to be in a civil war against their own people. And even if they're successful in the short term, what it means is that these same people who traveled down to the aid distribution center to collect aid are just going to go back for more, and this time they won't come home. So if they try to prevent Gazans from going to the distribution center after they've come home with their first package, the next time they leave, they won't come back. If, on the other hand, Hamas chooses not to do anything about it and allow these people who collected their aid to just go about their business and not try to take the aid for themselves and not try to punish them or prevent them from going back, then Hamas has lost control and lost their power to govern. So either way, Hamas loses. Bottom line, the Qataris who've invested billions of dollars in Hamas and, of course, own and operate the Al Jazeera network and negotiate on behalf of Hamas, they are in a panic. The UN, who risks becoming an irrelevant entity, they are also in a panic. And most of all, Hamas is in a panic. This humanitarian aid distribution system, again, it was only the first day. It was a moderate success. Hundreds of thousands of meals were distributed. There were some moments of chaos, and in the days ahead, the system will get streamlined. There will be more and more distribution centers, and we will see the panic and the demonization of Israel rise to levels unforeseen. So fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but Israel is winning. Make sure to go into the description of this video below and download the free ebook that is available there. This is a collection of columns that I've published over the course of the last year and a half since the beginning of the October 7th war. It gives you a feel for everything we've been through in this war. So go ahead and download that ebook.